Hello, welcome to EPG Pathshala. Today we are doing module 11 and that is listening skill. After learning this module, you will be able to explain the meaning of listening skill, understand the listening activity, be able to identify the barriers to the listening activity, identify the materials used for listening activity, comprehend the phases of a listening process, understand the different types of listening and understand the essentials for being a good listener. So, with this learning outcomes, let us see what listening skill is. Every good conversation starts with good listening. Good listening is very essential. It is a habit which needs to be cultivated. It is a receptive skill. Just as reading is a receptive skill, listening is also a receptive skill. Receptive skill means we are at the receiving end. We receive information, we receive knowledge, we receive facts, we receive information that gives us pleasure. That is how it is called, listening is called a receptive skill. Receptive and reading both are passive skills, unlike speaking and writing. We are actively involved in speaking and writing, but they are the later stages of learning a language. Listening is very basic. Remember how you learnt your mother tongue? It was when you listened to your parents, you listened to your grandparents, you listened to your siblings. That is how you learnt listening. So, listening is very important. It is very different from hearing. There is a marked difference between listening and hearing. When you say hearing, you hear sounds, you hear what is happening around you, but when you listen, you are able to understand the meaning of what the person wants to tell you. So, that is how listening differs from hearing. Now, let us see what is the significance of listening. Every good communication starts with good listening. Good listening skill helps to improve our interaction and relationship with others. It leads to fewer mistakes in any task we are allotted, increases sharing of information, which in turn leads to more creative and innovative work. Therefore, we listen to obtain information, we listen to understand, we listen for enjoyment, and we listen to learn. There are certain barriers to the listening activity. Both listening and reading are receptive skills, but listening can be more difficult than reading because different speakers produce the same sounds in different ways. They may have different dialects and accents, they may use different stress, rhythm, intonation and pronunciation. Therefore, listening becomes all the more difficult. The speed of the input of spoken material cannot be controlled. Besides, spoken material is often heard only once. The listener cannot stop the speaker to work out the meaning. Background noise and recurrence of matter may also pose a problem in listening. Therefore, in listening, people must do things to process information they are receiving. They have to hear what is being said. They have to pay attention to catch as much information as possible so as to construct a meaningful message in their mind by relating what they hear to what they already know. While listening, the speaker's facial expressions, gestures and other body language provide visual clues which help to understand and predict what is heard. Most of the listening allows the listener to respond to the speaker whether the matter is understood or not. There are different kinds of listening material. In general, there are two different kinds of material you can listen to: authentic materials and course book materials. Authentic materials include anything that is unscripted, live lectures and seminars, the English you hear on the television and radio, and the English spoken outside the classroom, etc. An unscripted text is one that is not written down in advance, but rather transcribed afterwards. It is more natural but often harder to follow because people do not speak in an organized or structured way in real life. Course book materials include simulated lectures and seminar presentations and semi-scripted listening tasks from course books. Now, the listening activity. What is real listening? Real listening is an active process that has 3 basic steps. The first is hearing, understanding and judging. Hearing just means listening enough to catch what the speaker is saying. For example, say you were listening to a report on zebras and the speaker mentioned that no two are alike. If you can repeat the fact, then you have heard what has been said. The next part of listening happens when you take what you have heard and understood it in your own way. Let's go back to that report on zebras. When you hear that no two are alike, think about what that might mean. You might think maybe this means that the pattern of stripes is different for each zebra. You have understood the matter. After you are sure you understand what the speaker has said, think about whether it makes sense. Do you believe what you have heard? You might think, how could the stripes be different for every zebra? But then again, the fingerprints are different for every person. I think yes, it seems to be believable. So here, real listening has 3 basic steps. They are hearing, understanding and judging. There are also 3 phases of listening. The pre-listening phase is when the teachers need to recognize that all students bring different backgrounds to the listening experience. Beliefs, attitudes and biases of the listeners will affect the understanding of the message. In addition to being aware of these factors, teachers should show students how their backgrounds affect the messages they receive. Before listening, students need assistance to activate what they already know about the ideas they are going to hear. Simply being told the topic is not enough. Pre-listening activities are required to establish what is already known about the topic, to build necessary background and to set purposes for listening. Students need to understand that the act of listening requires not just hearing but also thinking, as well as a good deal of interest and information that both speaker and listener must have in common. The while listening phase. Students need to understand the implications of rate in the listening process. Nichols in 1948 found that people listen and think at 4 times the normal conversation rate. Students have to be encouraged to use the rate gap to actively process the message. In order to use that extra time wisely, there are several things students can be encouraged to do. They can run a mental commentary on it, they can doubt it, talk back to it, or extend it. They can rehearse it in order to remember it, that is, they repeat interesting points back to themselves. They can formulate questions to ask the speaker and jot down keywords or key phrases. They can wonder if what they are listening to is true or what motives the speaker has in saying it, or whether the speaker is revealing personal feelings rather than objective assessments. This kind of mental activity is what effective listeners do during listening. The third phase is the post-listening phase. This is where students need to act upon what they have heard to clarify meaning and extend their thinking. Well-planned post-listening activities are just as important as those before and during. Some examples are, to begin with, students can ask questions of themselves and the speaker to clarify their understanding and confirm their assumptions. Hook and Evans suggest that the postmortem is a very useful device. Students should talk about what the speaker said, question statements of opinion, amplify certain remarks and identify parallel incidents from life and literature. They can summarize a speaker's presentation orally, in writing or as an outline. In addition to the traditional outline format, students could use timelines, flowcharts, ladders, circles, diagrams, webs or maps. They can review their notes and add information that they did not have an opportunity to record during the speech. They can also analyze and evaluate critically what they have heard. Students can be given opportunities to engage activities in that to build upon and develop concepts acquired during an oral presentation. These may include writing, for example, a response journal, a learning log or composition. It may include reading, that is, further research on a topic or a contradictory viewpoint. It may also include art or drama, for example, designing a cover jacket after a book talk or developing a mock trial concerning the topic through drama in role. So, that is about the phases of listening, that is the pre-listening phase, the while listening phase and the post-listening phase. Now, we move on to types of listening. The first type of listening is discriminative listening. This develops right from childhood as we grow into an adult, gaining more life experiences. Gradually, our ability to distinguish between different sounds improves. We are able to recognize different voices, and at the same time, we develop the ability to identify understated differences in the way sounds are made and what they mean. Differences include many intricacies, recognizing foreign languages, distinguishing between regional accents and clues to the emotions and feelings of the speaker. Most of us are very good at discriminative learning, discriminative listening. We listen what we actually want to listen. We leave away what we do not want to listen. And thus, discriminative listening is practiced by all of us. The second type of listening is comprehensive listening. This involves understanding the message that is being communicated. For this, the listener first needs appropriate vocabulary and language skills. Overly complicated language or technical jargon can be a barrier to comprehensive listening. Two different people listening to the same thing may understand the message in two different ways depending on their comprehension skills. Comprehensive listening also depends upon a person's own perspective. What perspective are you listening to the person in front of you? It also means you are going to interpret that person's spoken words into how you want to perceive them. This is all about comprehensive listening. Informational listening. Whenever you listen to learn something, you are engaged in informational listening. This is done in day-to-day situations, in education and at work. Informational listening takes place at the railway stations, or when you are following certain orders, or when you are sitting in a classroom, or you are asking, perhaps you are asking a route to somebody on the road, or while you are traveling somewhere and somebody is giving you some basic information. Here you are gathering information. Therefore, it is called informational listening. The next type of listening is critical listening. When we have to evaluate or scrutinize what is being said and make judgments, we are involved in critical listening. It involves some sort of problem solving or decision making. One has to analyze the information being received with what we already know or believe. Critical listening is usually practiced by judges at an competition. Suppose there is an elocution competition, or there is a debate, or there is an extempore. What happens is the judges are listening very critically. Here it is critical listening because they have to give their judgment, whether it is right or wrong, whether it is good or bad, whether it is enough or not enough, or it is appropriate or inappropriate. Maybe a person who is presenting a research paper, there also the judges or the person in charge or the chairperson has to give a report of what has been said. So here whatever is being said is listened to very critically, and therefore this is called critical listening. The next type of listening is empathetic listening. Empathic listening involves attempting to understand the feelings and emotions of the speaker. To put yourself into the speaker's shoes and share their thoughts is called empathic listening. This type of listening does not involve making judgments or offering advice, but gently encouraging the speaker to explain and elaborate on their feelings and emotions. Guidance workers and counselors, especially psychiatrists or psychologists who are involved in the profession, are supposed to be empathic listeners because they listen to their patients very empathetically. Appreciative listening is listening for enjoyment. It is a good example in listening to music, especially which is a way to relax. When you listen to music, when you listen to songs, you are at a concert, you appreciate what is being said, and therefore this is called appreciative listening. Rapport listening. When trying to build rapport with others, we can engage in a type of listening that encourages the other person to trust and like us. A salesman, for example, may make an effort to listen carefully to what you are saying as a way to promote trust and potentially make a sale. This type of listening is common in situations of negotiation too. Therefore, it is called rapport listening. The next type is selective listening. This is a negative type of listening. It implies that the listener is somehow biased to what they are hearing. Bias can be based on preconceived ideas or emotionally difficult communications. Selective listening is a sign of failing communication. You cannot hope to understand if you have filtered out some of the messages that you don't want to listen and may reinforce or strengthen your bias for future communications. Now, I present some sample listening activities. The first listening activities is a word clap. Together on the floor, read them a story that repeats a particular word many times. Instruct the children to clap every time they hear that word. You can make the game more competitive by paying attention to which children are clapping only after hearing their classmates clap. These kids can be out and the game can continue until establishing a winner. The next listening activity is the circle message. You sit in a circle on the floor or outside, whisper a short action phrase into the ear of a child. For example, touch your nose and jump up and down. Instruct the children to whisper the message from one person to the next until reaching the end. The last student to receive the message must perform the action. This is a great game to play for children to practice attentive listening skills. Drawing a picture is another task. This game works well for people of all ages. Choose more difficult pictures for older individuals. Explain to the children that they are to draw a picture according to your verbal instructions. For example, to draw a picture of a cat, you can begin by telling the students to draw a figure 8 with 2 triangles at the top. Continue to give verbal instructions on how to draw the cat and award the child whose drawing closely resembles yours. The next activity is on actions and sounds. Prepare an audio track that plays a variety of different sounds such as a car horn, a whistle, and a bell chime. Explain to the students that each sound is associated with an action. For example, when the child hears the car horn, they should jump. Play the audio track and watch as the children perform the necessary actions. If a child stops paying attention or incorrectly performs an action, she is out and sits down. Continue playing until a winner is determined. Another activity is the listening quiz. Choose an interesting story, speech or newspaper article. Read the piece in front of the class. The class is not permitted to take notes. At the end of the piece, questions based on what they have heard. After everyone is finished, students take turns reading their answers aloud and correcting their quizzes. Whoever answers the most correctly wins. Now, there are certain tips for being a good listener. The first one is give your full attention on the person who is speaking. Don't look out of the window or anywhere else that is going on in the room. Make sure your mind is focused too. It can be easy to let your mind wander if you think you know what the person is going to say next. But you might be wrong. If you feel your mind is wandering, change the position of your body and try to concentrate on the speaker's words. Let the speaker finish before you begin to talk. Speakers appreciate having the chance to say everything they would like to say without being interrupted. When you interrupt, it looks like you aren't listening, even if you are really doing so. Let yourself finish listening before you begin to speak. You can't really listen if you are busy thinking about what you want to say next. Listen for main ideas. The main ideas are the most important points the speaker wants to get across. They may be mentioned at the start or end of a talk and repeated a number of times. Pay special attention to statements that begin with phrases such as, my point is, dash dash dash. Or the thing to remember is, ask questions. If you are not sure you understand what the speaker has said, just ask. It is a good idea to repeat in your own words what the speaker said so that you can be sure your understanding is correct. For example, you might say, when you said that no two zebras are alike, did you mean that the stripes are different on each one? Give feedback. Sit up straight and look directly at the speaker. Now and then, nod to show that you understand. At appropriate points, you may also smile, frown, laugh or be silent. These are all ways to let the speaker know that you are really listening. Remember, you listen with your face as well as your ears. Thoughts move about 4 times as fast as speech. With practice, while you are listening, you will also be able to think what you are hearing, really understand it and give feedback to the speaker. So that's all about listening activity. To conclude, let us sum up what we have heard today or what we have learned today. We began with what is listening skill. So listening skill is a receptive activity. It is very unlike writing and speaking. It is just like reading. You are at the receiving end. We also saw which are the different phases of listening. It is the pre-listening phase, the while listening phase and the post-listening phase. There are different types of listening that we have learnt about, like appreciative listening or informative listening, empathic listening, all done with a different purpose. There were certain tips and strategies also that we learnt to improve our listening ability. But remember one thing, listening to somebody who is speaking is very important because it speaks about your manners. It is an etiquette that you really need to develop. Thank you very much.